The East Tyrone Brigade of the Provisional Irish Republican Army, also known as the Tyrone Brigade, was one of the most active Republican paramilitary groups in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. It is believed to have drawn its membership from across the eastern side of County Tyrone as well as North County Monaghan and South County Londonderry. Linna's strategy. In the 1980s, the IRA in East Tyrone and other areas close to the border, such as South Armagh, were following a Maoist military theory devised for Ireland by Jim Lynagh, a high-profile member of the IRA in East Tyrone. The theory involved creating no-go zones that the British Army and Royal Ulster Constabulary did not control and gradually expanding them. Linnah's strategy was to start off with one area which the British military did not control, preferably a Republican stronghold such as East Tyrone. The South Armagh area was considered to be a liberated zone already, since British troops and the RUC could not use the roads there for fear of roadside bombs and long-range harassing fire. Thus it was from there that the IRA East Tyrone Brigade attacks were launched, with most of them occurring in East Tyrone in areas close to South Armagh, which offered good escape routes. The first phase of Linnah's plan to drive out the British security forces from East Tyrone involved destroying isolated rural police stations and then intimidating and killing any building contractors who were employed to rebuild them. Linnah's plans met strong criticism from senior brigade member Kevin McKenna, who regarded the strategy as too impractical, too ambitious, and not sustainable. But journalist Ed Maloney, the IRA Northern Command, however, approved a scaled-down version of the strategy, aimed at hampering the repair and refurbishment of British security bases. Scottish-born journalist Kevin Tullis has written that from 1985 onward, the brigade led a 5-year campaign that left 33 security facilities destroyed and nearly 100 seriously damaged. Before the Lochiel ambush, members of the East Tyrone Brigade had previously carried out 2 attacks on RUC bases in their operational area, described by author Mark Urban as spectaculars. The first was an assault on Ballygawley Barracks. The second attack was on the part-time station at the Birches, County Armagh, and it began by driving a JCB digger with a 200-pound bomb in its bucket through the reinforced fences the RUC had in place around the bases, and then exploding the bomb and raking the police station with gunfire. On these 2 occasions the stations were destroyed, and, in the first case, 2 of the occupants killed. In April 1987 they shot and killed Harold Henry, one of the main building contractors to the security forces in Northern Ireland. Lochiel ambush. On the 8th of May 1987, at least 8 members of the brigade launched another attack on the unmanned Lochiel RUC base. The IRA unit used the same tactics as it had done in the Birches attack. It destroyed a substantial part of the base with a 200-pound bomb and raked the building with gunfire. However, as their attack was underway, the IRA unit was ambushed by a special air service unit. The SHAS shot dead 8 IRA members and a civilian who had accidentally driven into the ambush. This was the IRA's greatest loss of life in a single incident since the days of the Anglo-Irish War. 6 IRA members from a supporting unit managed to escape. The 8 volunteers killed in the ambush became known as the Lochiel Martyrs among many Republicans. In December 2011, the Police Service of Northern Ireland's Historical Inquiries team found that not only did the IRA team fire first but that they could not have been safely arrested. They concluded that the Shash were justified in opening fire. In 2012, a Gaelic Athletic Association club in Tyrone distanced itself from a Republican commemoration of those killed in the ambush. This was in response to a complaint from Democratic Unionist Party Assemblyman William McRae accusing the GAA of turning a blind eye to Republican terrorist events in the last years. GAA Central Council official reply was that the GAA has strict protocols and rules in place regarding the use of property for political purposes. The association is committed to a shared future based on tolerance for the different identities and cultural backgrounds of people who share this community and this island. Subsequent brigade activity. In the aftermath of the Loughgall ambush, the Shash ambush had no noticeable long-term effect on the level of IRA activity in East Tyrone. The level of IRA activity in the area did not show any real decline in the aftermath. In the 2 years prior to the Loughgall ambush, the IRA killed 7 people in East Tyrone and North Armagh, and 11 in the 2 years following the ambush. Additionally, most of the attacks which took place in County Fermanagh during this period of the Troubles were also launched from South Tyrone and Monaghan. However, many of the remaining activists were young and inexperienced and fell into further ambushes, leading to high casualties by the standards of the low-intensity guerrilla conflict in Northern Ireland. Ed Maloney, Irish journalist and author of The Secret History of the IRA, states that the Provisional IRA East Tyrone Brigade lost 53 members killed in the Troubles, the highest of any rural brigade area. Of these, 28 were killed between 1987 and 1992. A major IRA attack in County Tyrone took place on the 20th of August 1988, barely a year after Loughgall, which ended in the deaths of 8 soldiers when a British Army bus was bombed at Kerr Road, near Ballygawley. The soldiers were being transported from Raff Aldergrove to a military base near Omagh after returning from leave in England. This attack forced the British military to ferry the troops to and from East Tyrone by helicopter. On the 30th of August 1988, an Shash ambush killed IRA members Gerard Hart, Martin Hart and Brian Mullen as they tried to kill an off-duty Ulster Defence Regiment member near Carrickmore. British intelligence identified them as the perpetrators of the attack on the military bus at Kerr Road. On the 16th of September 1989, a British sergeant of the Royal Corps of Signals was shot and killed by an IRA sniper while he was repairing a radio mast at Coal Island Army (RUC) base. According to journalist Ed Maloney, Michael Pete Ryan, an alleged top brigade member, was the commander of the IRA flying column that launched the attack on Derryard checkpoint in Fermanagh on the 13th of December 1989. British military sources reported that other IRA volunteers from East Tyrone were involved in the assault. The checkpoint was stormed and 2 British soldiers were killed in action. Journalist Ian Bruce claims that an unidentified Irishman who had served in the parachute regiment was the leader of the IRA unit, citing intelligence sources. From 1990 to the 1994 IRA ceasefire operations against British security forces on the 11th of February 1990, the brigade managed to shoot down a British Army Gazelle helicopter near Clogher by machine gun fire and wounding 3 soldiers, one of them seriously. The helicopter was hit between Clogher and Arthur, over the border near Derrygorry. Across the border, the Gazelle broke up during the subsequent crash landing. On the 24th of March 1990, there was a gun battle between an IRA unit and undercover British forces at the village of Capper, County Tyrone. in which IRA members fired at a civilian-type car driven by security forces, according to Archie Hamilton, then Secretary of State for Defense. Hamilton stated that there were no security of civilian casualties. Unverblacked claimed the IRA men thwarted an ambush and at least 2 SHASH members were killed. A second shooting took place in the village of Pomeroy on the 28th of June, this time against British regular troops. 1 soldier was seriously wounded. In October 1990, 2 IRA volunteers from the brigade were shot dead near Lockall by SHASH undercover members while allegedly collecting 2 rifles from an IRA arms dump. On 1 January 1991, a British Army outpost was fired on by an IRA unit at Ornicloy. In May, an IRA unit firing the light machine gun disrupted a UDR mobile checkpoint at Lurgwilly Road, north of Kappa. No casualties were reported. On 3 June, 3 IRA men, Lawrence McNally, Michael, Pete, Ryan, and Tony Doris, died in another SHASH ambush at Coa, where the car was riddled with gunfire. Ryan, according to Maloney, had led the mixed flying column under direct orders of top IRA Army Council member Thomas "Slab" Murphy 2 years before. The RUC stated the men were on the way to mount an ambush on Protestant workmen. On 31 January 1992, an IRA van bomb blew up in downtown Dungannon, resulting in 3 people wounded and severe property damage to the city centre and to the RUC Army base. Another 4 IRA members were killed in an ambush in February 1992. The 4, Peter Clancy, Kevin Barry O'Donnell, Sean O'Farrell and Patrick Vincent, were killed at Clono after an attack on the RUC station in Coal Island. O'Donnell had been released without charges for possession of weapons on 2 different occasions in the past, whereas the previous ambushes of IRA men had been well planned by special forces. The Clono killings owed much to a series of mistakes by the IRA men in question. They had mounted a heavy DSHK machine gun on the back of a stolen lorry, driven right to the RUC British Army station and opened fire with trace ammunition at the fortified base at point-blank range, when the long range of the weapon would enable them to fire from a safe distance. No efforts were made to conceal the firing position of the machine gun. After the shooting they drove past the house of Tony Doris, the IRA man killed the previous year, where they fired more shots in the air and were heard to shout, "Up the IRA, that's for Tony Doris." A support vehicle further compromised the getaway by flashing its emergency lights. The 6 attackers gathered on the same spot, instead of vanishing separately. The IRA men were intercepted by the SHASH as they were trying to dump the lorry and escape in cars in the car park of Clono Roman Catholic Church, whose roof was set on fire by army flares. 2 IRA men escaped from the scene, but the 4 named above were killed. 1 British soldier was wounded. One witness claimed some of the men were wounded and tried to surrender but were killed by the British soldiers. In March 1992, members of the brigade destroyed McGowan's service station along the Baldeadly-Monaghan Road, on the basis that they were supplying British forces, while a soldier was injured by a bomb near Arthur. Another IRA bomb attack on 12 May 1992, against British troops, near Kappa, in which a paratrooper lost both legs, triggered a series of clashes on that day between soldiers and local residents in the staunchly Republican town of Coal Island. On 12 and 17 May 1992, The 12th of May riots ended with the paratroopers' assault on 3 bars where they injured 7 civilians. Another street fracas 5 days later, on the 17th of May, between a King's Own Scottish Borderers platoon and a group of nationalist youths in Coal Island resulted in the theft of an army machine gun and a new confrontation with the paratroopers. 6 paratroopers were charged with criminal damage in the aftermath, but were acquitted in 1993. 5 were bound over. A British soldier was injured in Pomeroy when his patrol was fired on by an IRA unit on 2 August 1992. The brigade was the first to use the Mark 15 barrack buster mortar in an attack on 5 December 1992 against an RUC station in Baldeadly. On 19 January 1993, the brigade claimed that the volunteers uncovered and destroyed a British Army observation post concealed in a derelict house in Drumcairn Forest, near Stewartstown. The same source reported that a British helicopter, a military ambulance and ground troops arrived to the scene shortly after, and that local residents believed that 2 soldiers had been wounded. From mid-1992 up to the 1994 ceasefire, IRA units in East and South Tyrone carried out 8 mortar attacks against police and military facilities and were also responsible for at least 16 bombings and shootings. The facilities damaged by mortar bombs included the above-mentioned Baldeadly Barracks, a British Army outpost at Ornicloy, the RUC barracks at Cloffer and Berra, both resulting in massive damage but no fatalities, an overshot aimed at the RUC base in Caledon, which was also hit by gunfire, and the RUC stations at Fintona, Carrickmore, and Pomeroy. At least 5 members of the security forces were killed by the IRA in around this area during the same period. Among the killed were 2 constables shot dead while driving a civilian-type vehicle in 5 Mile Town's main street on 12 December 1993. A British Army helicopter was fired on in the aftermath of the ambush. Another fatality was a RIR soldier, Private Reginald McCollum, from Cookstown, who was abducted and shot dead while on leave. His body was found in the outskirts of Armagh City on 21 May 1994. His murder was the IRA's first act of terrorism since the government replied on Thursday to Sinn Féin's 20 questions about the Downing Street Declaration. His elder brother, Nigel McCollum, who was a civilian contractor to the Ministry of Defence, had died in a South Armagh Brigade mortar attack 1 year earlier, on 8 March 1993, while working inside an army base near Keady, a decade before Nigel McCollum's death. On 19 September 1983, the brothers' grandmother, Lily McCollum, was killed by a booby-trap bomb said to have been meant for her brother, at that time a member of the security forces. Other attacks. In January 1992, an IRA roadside bomb destroyed a van carrying 14 workers who had been rebuilding Leesley British Army base in Omagh. 8 were killed and the rest were badly wounded. The bombing was at T-Bane Crossroads, near Cookstown. One of the workers killed, Robert Dunseith, was an off-duty Royal Irish Rangers soldier. The IRA said that the men were legitimate targets because they were collaborating with the forces of occupation. As the men were all Protestants, many Protestants saw it as a sectarian attack. The UDA retaliated by shooting dead 5 Catholic male civilians inside a betting shop on the Ormeau Road, Belfast. IRA volunteers in Tyrone was the target of an assassination campaign carried out by the loyalist paramilitaries of the Ulster Volunteer Force. The UVF killed 40 people in East Tyrone between 1988 and 1994. Of these, most were Catholic civilians with no known paramilitary connections, but 6 were Provisional Irish Republican Army members. When the IRA responded by killing a retired UDR member, Leslie Dallas, and 2 elderly Protestants, Austin Nelson and Ernest Rankin, on 7 March 1989. The UVF shot dead 3 IRA members and a Catholic civilian in a pub in Kappa on 3 March 1991. The main target, Brian Arthurs, escaped injury. List him as a civilian. The IRA retaliated on 5 August 1991 by shooting and killing a former UDR soldier leaving his workplace along Altmore Road, Kappa. A former UDR soldier was killed when an IRA bomb exploded underneath his car in Kildress, County Tyrone in April 1993. It was claimed that he had Loyalist connections. The latter attack led to Loyalist allegations that the IRA was killing Protestant landowners in Tyrone and Fermanagh in an orchestrated campaign to drive Protestants out of the region, which were rubbished by many, including other Unionists. List of actions from 1996 until the 1997 IRA ceasefire. There were a number of actions carried out by the IRA in the eastern part of Tyrone from 1996 up to the latest IRA ceasefire of July 1997 to 2 February 1996. The house of a part-time member of the RUC was riddled with 57 gunshots in Moy. There were no casualties. A senior security source claimed that the IRA was responsible, although the IRA later denied as mischievous any claims that it was involved in the incident. 5 February 1997, an IRA unit fired a horizontal mortar at a British patrol on Newell Road in Dungannon. There were no injuries. 10 February 1997, a horizontal mortar fired by an IRA unit hit an RUC armoured vehicle leaving a security base. The ambush took place outside the village of Pomeroy. 1 RUC officer was injured. The 22nd of February 1997, an IRA mortar unit was intercepted by the RUC in Caledon, on its way to carry out an attack on a British security facility. A 5-mile chase followed before the IRA volunteers managed to escape on foot. The 26th of March 1997, a grenade was thrown by IRA volunteers at the British Army RUC base in Coal Island. The device held the perimeter fence. Undercover members of the British Army shot and seriously injured 19-year-old Republican Gareth Dorris in the aftermath. The soldiers left the scene under the protection of the RUC after being cornered by a crowd. 2 women were wounded by plastic bullets fired by RUC officers. Dorris recovered from his wounds and was sentenced to 10 years in jail for involvement in the attack before being released in 2000 under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement. 5 July 1997, a female RUC officer from Portadown was shot in the face by an IRA volunteer during an attack on an armoured vehicle beside the British Army RUC base. Her wounds were said to be non-life-threatening. 8 July 1997, a landmine was planted by the IRA near Dungannon, leading to a bomb alert. There were no casualties. 9 July 1997, IRA gunmen hijacked and burned a number of vehicles at Dungannon. Roisin McAlliskey, daughter of political activist Bernadette McAlliskey and suspected IRA member from Coal Island, was accused by German authorities of being involved in a mortar attack on British Army facilities in Osnabrück, Germany, on 28 June 1996. Her extradition from Northern Ireland was eventually denied in 2007 due to discrepancies in the claims against her. The commander of the brigade, Kevin McKenna, was appointed Chief of Staff of the IRA in 1983. He would be the longest-serving volunteer in this position, right up to the 1997 ceasefire.